All right, so number one, I am back home in Arkansas. For anybody that does not know, I did move from North Carolina. I didn't tell everybody that I didn't tell other people that I was moving just because it was just such short notice and had to hurry up and figure some things out and pack some things. So for anybody that watches this, anybody that doesn't know or does know, I have moved from North Carolina. I'm back in Arkansas. I'm back in my dad and my stepmom's crib. Um, but that's not what this video is about. This video is about the best Marvel movie. And the best well, not even the best Marvel movie, the best Avengers movie. The best Avengers movie has to be, I'm sorry, it has to be Age of Ultron. I'm sorry. I've watched every Avengers movie, and Age of Ultron, it takes the cake every time. Not only is it a comfort movie that you can watch 1,000 times, you can watch it, a year from now, and it'll still be, just as classic. I compare Avengers Age of Ultron up there with the Sam Raimi trilogy of Spider-Man. Preferably the first movie. It falls right there in that range of comfort movies that I can watch as a nerd. You know what I mean? It had everything. I mean, it had action before the titles even opened up. If anybody's watched Age of Ultron, then you remember the opening scene where it was just straight action, just straight to the point action. They're looking for Loki's scepter. They take out Baron Strucker, and we see just the prelude to what's to happen before the opening credits even happen. And I was sitting down watching Age of Ultron again today, just out of curiosity, because I was watching Avengers Assemble, the animated TV show, and I think Ultron had about 2 or 3 episodes in that TV show. If you ever watched not Age of Ultron, but the Avengers Assemble animated TV show, it's very different from the live action movies, because I think that show was earlier on in its time. But anyways, I was watching some of the episodes of Ultron, and I was like, man, the first episode that I saw with Ultron, that it didn't do him justice. It did not do him justice. None of the episodes, as good as they were for animation, they do none of it justice for live action film. And as I was sitting down watching, I was taking notes and just kind of dissecting the film from a critiquing standpoint and a nerd standpoint. Just some of the key aspects or just key moments within the movie that I felt were important, that make this movie important. And these are in no specific order. Number one, it introduces Pietro Maximoff, who is Quicksilver, and Wanda Maximoff, who is also known as the Scarlet Witch down the line. If if you're not a fan, that's a spoiler for you. I think that was very important because we know Quicksilver and Wanda to be part of the Fox universe, where you have Quicksilver, who is Magneto's son, and Wanda. I don't know if that's I believe Wanda is related to Magneto in some way. I might be wrong, so please don't jump in the comments and jump down my throat. I might be wrong. But yeah, we get an introduction of Quicksilver and Wanda Maximoff. It's one that you didn't see coming in this movie. When I first watched the movie, I didn't expect to see them. I don't even know how they were even able to get the rights, because in WandaVision you see that it's not the same Quicksilver. It's the Quicksilver from, what's the guy's name? I forget the actor's name, but he's the same guy that played in Days of Future Past that's in WandaVision. So when you see the Age of Ultron and you see that Quicksilver dies in this movie, but you go watch WandaVision, it's confusing. It's very confusing. And but I was glad to see the introductions of Wanda and Pietro Maximoff, Quicksilver. I loved how their characters was developed throughout the movie. I loved that Wanda had a a reason for doing, for becoming the Scarlet Witch. Her character really evolved through each movie, from Civil War to Infinity War and Endgame and so on in the series. Even in Multiverse of Madness, I kind of feel like she was justified in her actions. She went through a lot. She lost her brother. She witnessed her husband get fucking slaughtered in Endgame. Well, not even slaughtered. He just, you know what I mean. But anyways, let's keep moving on. Age of Ultron lays the foundation for Infinity and Endgame. And it kind of does. I feel like Age of Ultron is the prelude to Endgame and Infinity War. When you think about it, and I'm pretty sure everybody's, this movie's like almost 10 years old, so this is kind of old, but it's just so interesting to me that I have to get it out. But Age of Ultron lays the foundation for Endgame, for Thanos, for Infinity War, because Ultron, what was his big mission at the end of the day? His purpose and his mission at the end of the day was to not only get rid of the Avengers, but to help humanity evolve by extinction, by 50% of the world dying off and letting the other 50% thrive on. Where Ultron failed is where Thanos saw, hey, and that's why I'm saying that this is a prelude. Of course, it took some years for all this to come together, but we all seen the end trailer, or I'm sorry, I'm stumbling over my words here, but we've all seen the end credits of Age of Ultron, where we see Thanos getting the Infinity Gauntlet ready to go get the Infinity Stones, and he says, "Fine, I'll do it myself." That's the prelude. Like, that's literally the prelude to what's to come. And of course, we have Civil War and everything else in between, but ultimately, Age of Ultron is the key to Infinity War and Endgame. It wouldn't have surprised me. Oh, and it's also no surprise that Ultron is actually coming back. I just learned about that today. If you haven't learned, Ultron is coming back for Armor Wars, and I've always said that Ultron did not get enough time in the spotlight. And I hope that they do right by him again. Not that they didn't do right by him in this film, because he did a phenomenal job in this film. But I also hope that they don't nerf him and water him down in the Armor War. In the Vision, TV series that they have coming up. I really hope that they keep the same plot, the same. Obviously, he probably won't be at the same peak level as he was in Age of Ultron, but I think we get the same Ultron, the same characteristics in the Vision TV series that's coming up. So yeah, I really loved Ultron as a Avenger level threat in this movie. Not only was he a product of Tony Stark, but he's also a product of Tony Stark's thinking, his ways. So, and that leads me into another aspect that I saw in this movie. AI is dangerous. This movie was made in like 2013, 2014, I think. Way before AI was even thought of. So when you think about it, of course we have iRobot that was made in like 2003 or whatever, but Age of Ultron touches on, the dangers of working with AI and trying to incorporate it within, the world's everyday living environment, as far as putting a suit around the world. I understand it, but I also understand that this movie made me understand, like, hey, AI within the wrong hands of a couple mad scientists can be very dangerous. So this movie actually Age of Ultron really put down a lot of gems. Iron Man can be seen as an anti-hero, and he can. Iron Man / Tony Stark can be seen as an anti-hero, because what was his quest from the beginning of getting the Ultron program up was to build a suit of armor around the world. Every time he tried to make it work, it always went wrong. When he first brought Loki's staff into the building, and him and Bruce were trying to reconfigure the Ultron program to make it work, it ultimately failed. And when it failed the first time and the Vision body was born, he was still trying to make it work by putting Jarvis into Vision. So we see elements of that evil Tony Stark come to play, or even not even evil Tony Stark, just his ways of thinking. His ways of thinking weren't evil, but just how it played out made him seem evil. You know what I mean? So it's one of those weird things where it's like he's misguided, but it's not, you know, it's within a good. He means well, but it ends up being shitty in the end. You know what I mean? And the movie really does a great job of depicting that, because if you look at Ultron, how he talked, his mannerisms, his jokes, his sense of humor, it comes from Tony Stark. So essentially what I'm saying here is we also in this movie get a sense of superior Iron Man. You know, I've always felt that Age of Ultron gave us a taste of what an evil Tony Stark can be like if unhinged to do so. And I've always looked at Ultron like being that superior Iron Man in this movie because of, you know, just he's just an asshole. Like, of course, his plan is to make the world a better place and kill off half of civilization and let the other half thrive. That's some superior Iron Man kind of thinking. If you're a fan of the comics, if you're a fan of the comics and you've read the comics and you've read the Axis, what the Axis program comics with Superior Iron Man, if you've done your research, you know, I'm not the best at it, but I read through the concepts, and just from watching Age of Ultron, Ultron gives me straight up Superior Iron Man vibes, and that's what I kind of gathered from this movie. We see the Avengers showing their vulnerability with each other with the party scene. You know, we see everybody kind of struggling with their own moral conflict, with their own moral conflicts, whether it be in relationships or it be with their own selves, or just, you know, showing their human side. With this movie I saw with Age of Ultron, we saw, you know, within the party scene, we see Natasha and Bruce Banner kind of trying to figure out what they're going to be. You know, are they going to be in a relationship or they're not going to be in a relationship? We see Thor showing his human side, how comfortable he is now with being in Midgard, which is Earth. You know, something we didn't see in the earlier Thor movies. He had to become accustomed to this life. We see that Captain America is almost worthy to lift Mjolnir, which was a big thing. You know, in that movie, when I first saw this movie and I saw Captain America, you know, not lift it up, but nudge it, that left so much to wonder in all of the nerd minds that, you know, we all thought, like, when are we going to see him lift Mjolnir? And that's why I say that this movie is a prelude to Infinity War and Endgame, because this is almost like a premonition of what was to come, because we see him, you know, pull that Mjolnir and make it move, but we don't see him pick it up. But in Endgame, Captain America finally wields Mjolnir. And it's like, if you're a comic book fan, if you're a nerd and you do your research, you know that this moment has been leading up since Age of Ultron. So it's really good that we got to see this movie really, you know, like I said before, lays the foundation for a lot that goes on within other movies like Endgame and Infinity War. Lines like the dialogue between Captain America and Iron Man, where Iron Man says, you know, that's the end game up there, and Captain America says, he says, that's the end game. How do we beat that? Captain America says, we'll beat it together. Iron Man says, we'll lose. Captain says, well, we'll do that together too. Now, if you go back and watch Endgame, now that dialogue was in Age of Ultron, but if you go back and watch Endgame, who was in space fighting Thanos by themselves? It was Iron Man, along with Guardians of the Galaxy, Spider-Man, and Doctor Strange. It might have been some other players there, but I didn't see. I haven't seen Endgame in a long time. But the one person that wasn't there, but they were still fighting in Wakanda. But the one person that wasn't there fighting with them was Captain America. Oh, actually, that was in Infinity War. In Endgame is when they had the big fight, and that's when I mean, I'm sorry, I'm skipping over my words. Excuse me. But Infinity War is where they had the big fight. In Endgame is where Iron Man confronts Captain America with a callback to Age of Ultron, saying, you know, you said that we would lose, we would do that together too, and you know, he wasn't there. Not that Captain America wasn't out fighting the good fight in Wakanda. He just wasn't at the fight with Tony Stark. And Tony takes that to heart. So a lot of what happens, and I'm sorry if I, have went over, a lot of my words and kind of jumbled over. But I was so excited when I was making the connection with these movies and writing down my notes that it was just all clicking together in my head so fast. But yeah, a lot of what what Age of Ultron brought in this movie can be seen played out within Infinity War and Endgame. What else? The Avengers become very vulnerable. We see that they're not as close. They still have a lot of learning to do as far as being mind controlled and shaking off a bad hit, because this was in the first Avengers movie. I don't think Loki gave them this much problems, but in the second one, Age of Ultron, they see that they're still on shaky ground, still trying to figure each other out, still trying to figure out the team. It's still a lot of secrets on the team. We see Clinton Barton go from saying, I don't have a girlfriend, to, oh, I was talking to my girlfriend, to, oh, we're 6 hours away from the safe house, to the safe house is your house with your girl and your kids. I'm like, whoa. So this movie really left a lot of mystery to the eye, because they didn't know each other like that. I mean, yeah, the first Avengers introduced us to them and put them together, but you can be put with the team and not know your teammates until y'all have really been battle tested. And I think Age of Ultron does a good job of really, really battle testing them and seeing what they're made of, breaking them down, breaking the Avengers down piece by piece, person by person, emotions by emotions, which, thanks to Wanda, Scarlet Witch, which you see more of that happen within the MCU. But you see them all go down on their own, in their own realities, battling their own personal demons. And I think that's kind of the focal point of this movie, is that you don't want to make a second Avengers movies where it's like they're all established, they're all working together. It's kind of like that thing where if you pull back the curtains with this movie, Age of Ultron, you pull back the curtains a little bit, and you see that from the first fight sequence in the beginning, where they were all close-knit, working together, partying together, to now it's a little bit mistrust there. Number one, you have Tony Stark and Bruce Banner working behind their backs, trying to figure out how can we make this scepter work for us, and indoctrinate it into the Ultron program. To Tony's wrong, and he's almost seen as the bad guy. But there's one key aspect that really centers them around each other, and that's Clinton Barton. Clint is probably the most human and the focal point of the group, because he's been under mind control. He's understood what that is. He's understood what it means to work with a team. He's been with SHIELD for years. He's got more to prove because he's a human. He's a guy with a bow and arrow. He's not specially enhanced. He doesn't have a suit of armor. He hasn't been through the Black Widow training. He's not the Hulk. He doesn't have gamma radiation. He's literally just a human with a bow and arrow. And, that's kind of what keeps the team together, is his humility and his ability to understand that I've been down this route before. I've been, I'm a focal leader here. He's not the main leader, but he's the focal leader. And, that was one thing that I noticed throughout this movie, was just how he was able to keep Number one, he has a family foundation. Clint has a family foundation at his feet, so he understands what it's like. He understands what it means to have people, depending on you. So in this movie, we see that Clint is really a focal point in this movie, but this movie is really centered around Tony Stark, just because of, Ultron was his creation, the Ultron bots. He was the one that wanted to put a suit of armor around the world that ultimately almost tried to kill the Avengers. It's really a lot. But ultimately, like I said, Age of Ultron is the best Avengers movie that I have seen. Now, of course, we have, all the other Avengers movies coming up, that have already out. And we also have Avengers Doomsday coming out next year, in 2 years, and Secret Wars. But I don't think you'll see a more grounded Avengers movie where you're pulling elements from every character into this movie and you're making it, a conflict of interest almost, if that makes sense. I think if most people go back and watch this movie from the first time you watched it to now, you'll see a vast difference in how you viewed it then versus how you viewed it now. Because how I watched it then, I was just, I was just a fan of the movies. And I didn't understand, the plot points that played into it. But watching it now as a vlogger and as a fellow nerd and a lover of comic books and superhero comic book movies, I see the direction that they go into, and I see where, they make it almost like, hey, it's relatable. The movie is relatable in key aspects. Whether you're a guy with a bow and arrow that is trying to keep the team together, or you're a man out of time that is trying to still find out who he is. I think we can see a lot of ourselves within this movie, and I think this movie really did a great job of projecting each character and what they're going through on their own, which I guess led to a lot of these solo movies coming out, like Thor Ragnarok. We see the disappearance of the Hulk, who's also in Thor Ragnarok. But yeah, I think Age of Ultron aged very well. It was able to tell the story of Ultron very, very, very good. It really put the Avengers on the brink of, hey, we really got to band together and trust one another. But yeah, that was kind of my review for Age of Ultron. I was just sitting down, watching it, taking notes, and just kind of, analyzing it. If you haven't already, go watch Age of Ultron. A really great movie. I give it a 10 out of 10 every time I watch it. I've watched the movie 1,000 times, and I still find it enjoyable. Like I said, it's a comfort movie. It's just an enjoyable movie. Action-packed from the beginning to the end. There's emotions that are to be felt within the movie. There are messages and sequences in this movie that really pull the Avengers together, and you see why that they are who they are because of the situations they're put under. But thank you all for tuning in to the channel, watching the review. I'm sorry if it was kind of mangled a little bit. I hope you all enjoyed. I wish I had a presentation to present you all with, but like I said, I don't have all that. But more coming soon. Stay tuned, stay locked in with the channel, and yeah, continue to be nerdy. Thank you.